There is a question that all of us ask other people all the time, and there's a question we all get asked all the time. It's a very simple question. How are you? We do this all the time to each other, right? It's just part of the custom. Like, how are you doing? How are you? How are you? And as I've been preparing over the last 3 months or so for this, I started paying really careful attention to how other people answer that question and how I answer that question. And I've discovered we all pretty much give the same answer. And maybe you're different, but you'd be the exception to the rule, because we all pretty much say, oh, I'm good, just busy. And now it's like, oh yeah, I'm good, just busy. And some of us think the busy thing is like a badge of honor. It's like proof that we're good, It's like, oh, I'm real busy, so everything's good, because I'm so busy. That's just the way it is for us, and that's fine. But I wanted to pause and get you to think about something. When we are all busy, but when is the last time that you had a day with nothing on your schedule? When's the last time you had a day and you had nothing you had to do? Or when's the last time you sat down for a dinner, for a meal, around a table with family or with friends, and it was completely unhurried conversation? You didn't have to rush off and do anything. You didn't have the pressure of, something coming up you had to get done. You were just able to sit and enjoy it. Or when is the last time this thought crossed your mind? What am I going to do with this spare time I've got? That has not crossed your mind, has it? Because none of us feel like we have free time. Well, most of us have more to do than we feel like we have time to do it. And the thing is, that pace of life, that's just normal. Feeling that busy, being that hurried, that's just normal now. That's just how all of us are. If you're not, you are the rare exception. I did have a buddy of mine catch me after the first service, and he said, I don't know how this applies to me because I still accidentally stop at green lights. And I said, that's a mental health series. We're going to have to, because I don't know, maybe he's not hurried, if he goes that slow. But for the rest of us, we're all busy, aren't we? And it just feels normal. I get that. I totally get that. It just feels normal. But historically, and I'm not trying to knock on any of us, but historically, that has not been normal. And historically, that has not been healthy. And researchers are actually discovering that the pace at which we are living our lives is doing quite a bit of damage to our lives, but we don't recognize it because everybody's doing the same thing, so it's just the world that we live in. So we're wrapping up the series today we've been in the last 4 weeks called Good Again. And the reason we named it this is very simple, because after the last 3 years of everything we've been through collectively and everything so many of you have been through personally, the desire, it doesn't matter if you're a Christian, not a Christian, like the desire we all have, we just want life to be good again. And I get that. And most of us are trying to make life good again by either disconnecting and withdrawing and isolating ourselves so we can rest up, or it's making up for everything we missed out on and traveling and getting in all the activities and going to all the destinations and doing all the stuff. And the reason we're taking those approaches is because we feel like we're tired, and that's keeping life from being good again. We just need to rest up, or we just need some time away, or we just need to be rejuvenated. But tired is a physical and mental problem, and I think our issue is deeper than that, as we've talked about through the series. Yeah, a lot of us are tired, but worse than that, or more concerning than that, we're empty. Tired's physical and mental. Empty is emotional, and it is spiritual. Our souls are empty. Our inner reserves are depleted, which is not a criticism, because after everything that you've been through, you can't go through all that without your reserves being depleted. But you also can't fix an empty soul just by taking a few naps or getting away from people for a little while or going on some trips. That doesn't do it. Which is why Jesus, in the accounts of his life, over and over would look at people and he would say, hey, I want you to come to me if you're weary. I want you to come to me if you're burdened. I want you to follow me. And that invitation for him, that invitation for him was not a metaphorical thing or a spiritual thing. It was literally, come hang out with me, Watch me for a little bit, see how I do life, watch the rhythm and pace of my life, watch my way of life, and then figure out how to sync your rhythm of life up with my way of life. And Jesus' promise was, if you will do this, you will find rest, not just for your bodies, you will find rest for your souls. In other words, I'll help you figure out how not to be empty. That was his promise. And as we talked about over the last few weeks, when you pursue Jesus' way of life, you discover a couple things. Jesus' way of life leads to peace. It leads to peace with God, peace with others, peace with yourself. And you know this, life can't be good again. Life's never good if you're not at peace with all three groups of those people. So you got to figure out, how do I have a way of life that is synced up and at a pace that produces peace? And as we saw last week, how do I have a way of life that leads me to live a purpose bigger than and beyond myself. Because again, that is where Jesus leads us. It's counterintuitive, but if we follow him, he always leads us away from ourselves. But in the process of walking away from ourselves, we find ourselves. In the process of putting our attention and focus on somebody else, we actually find who we are in the middle of all of it. That's what happens when you learn how to sync your rhythm of life with Jesus' way of life. But you can't do that. You can't do that unless you're living your life at the pace that Jesus lived his life. You can't do that unless your rhythm of life is the same rhythm as his. And that is difficult to do because so many of us are moving at such a fast pace. Now, if you're wondering where the Bible is in all this, we'll get to the scripture in a minute, okay? Hang on. But first, researchers have discovered that this pace at which so many of us are living, this pace that feels normal, they've discovered it's not nearly as healthy as we may think it is. And they've discovered we're not being nearly as productive as we may think we are. As a matter of fact, they have coined a term for this. They call it hurry sickness. I don't know if you've heard this. They call it hurry sickness. And as I was researching for this, I discovered 3 different definitions that different groups of researchers had given to hurry sickness, and together they give a pretty good picture, so I thought I would just share them with you. The first group said hurry sickness is a behavior pattern characterized by continual rushing and anxiousness, an overwhelming and continual sense of urgency. There's no need to elbow anybody next to you, okay? It's like, we know exactly what that feels like though, don't we? You're like, yeah, that's Sunday through Saturday. That's exactly what that is. Here was another definition. A malaise. Does anybody know what a malaise is? A malaise is sounds like a salad dressing. Like, I need chicken salad and malaise on the side. I looked this up. So a malaise is when something's not right and you know inside something's not right, but you can't put your finger on what's causing it. That's a malaise. So they said a malaise, hurry sickness is a malaise in which a person feels chronically short of time and so tends to perform every task faster. Does that sound familiar? And tends to get flustered when encountering any kind of delay. Then the third group defined it this way: a continuous struggle and unremitting attempt to accomplish or achieve more and more things or participate in more and more events in less and less time. Did they look at our schedules or what? It's like, you don't have to be brilliant. You don't have to have a doctor's degree to come up with that, because that's just the life we live, isn't it? So there's a book that's been written about this by a couple of these researchers called The Time Cure. And to be fully transparent, I did not read the book. I just read the summary of the book, cheat code, in case you're wondering how you can do that sometimes. But in this book, they gave a big, long list of symptoms because they're having a hard time convincing all of us people that hurry sickness is actually a problem. So one of the things they've done is they put together a long list of symptoms that they show people to try to help them understand this is not normal and this is not healthy. So I don't want to share all of them with you, but I want to show you 4 of them, and I just thought this would be fun. Here's what we're going to do. As I read a symptom, if that has been true of you since January 1st at some point over the last 5 weeks, I want you to raise your hand, okay? Now, don't feel bad. Don't be embarrassed. We're all messed up people here. There are going to be a lot of hands up, all right? So you're not going to be singled out. Don't worry. So here we go. Here's the first symptom. Moving from one checkout line to another because it looks shorter or faster. You better believe it. Or if you're like me, it's like, no, I just refuse to go to a checkout line. You're going to bring my stuff to the car or to my house because I don't even want to go in there. Yeah, this is a lot of us, right? Here's another one. Counting the cars in front of you and either getting in the lane that has the least cars or is going the fastest. I do this without even thinking about it every time I pull up to a red light. If you're ever behind me, you'll watch. I'll weave until I figure out the right one. Yeah, here's the third one. Here's the third one. Multitasking to the point of forgetting one of the tasks. How many of you have done that? Yeah, it's like, what was I doing again, you know? Now, here's the last one. I love this last one. I picked this for a reason. Accidentally putting your clothes on inside out or backwards. Okay. Messed up. Okay, you need a therapist. There's no doubt. It's like, no. This is all of us, isn't it? This is all of us. Here's the thing. This stuff, I mean, maybe not the last one, but at least the other 3. This stuff is so common that we're like, well, of course, everybody should do that, you know? And researchers are going, wait a minute. For the majority of world history, people didn't act this way. They didn't do this. And to them, according to research, it is a problem Because hurry sickness actually is violently attacking our souls. It's draining our souls. Now, my question to you is, why would we live this way? Why would we live this way? And the reason I ask that question is because I do know for a fact that 3 years ago, back in 2020, you remember when the whole world shut down, at least for a little bit for everybody? You remember that? Back when all of that happened, everybody slowed down. You slowed down. You were at home because all the activities were canceled. You were having dinner around the table with family or friends. You weren't running nonstop. You had days that were completely unhurried that you were like, well, what do we want to do around the house? You were coming up with projects to do because you had so much time on your hands. And the thing, and it's just because of the line of work we're in, the thing that we heard over and over from so many people, our team here at Journey, the thing we heard over and over was, oh my gosh, we just love this. I mean, not everything going on with COVID, but the pace, oh my gosh, we love this pace. This has been so good for our family. This has been so good for us. It's been so good. We heard that over and over again. So behind the scenes, we ran a little pool, and everybody decided to bet on how long it would take y'all to go back to being fast, and I won a lot of money, so thank you very much. I'm kidding. I don't gamble. So anyway, but we did have this conversation behind the scenes all the time. Okay, what's going to happen, though, when everything opens back up? And we knew because we're just like you. When everything opens back up, as much as we love this, and as much as we say, oh, I've learned my lesson, I'm not going to do that what I used to do. I'm going to protect this. No. Our pace of life is back as fast or faster than it was before. Why? I mean, you said, I absolutely love this slower pace. This is so much healthier for all of us, for my relationships, for my soul, for me spiritually, whatever. You said that. I said that. Then we're back over here. Why in the world would we make a decision that we knew was not in our best interest, but we do it anyway? Well, there's an author and theologian passed away just a couple years ago by the name of Dallas Willard. And Dallas wrote about busyness and hurry, and he wrote it way before COVID, interestingly enough. But one of the things he said about hurry was this. He said, hurry is a state of frantic effort that one falls into in response to inadequacy, fear, or guilt. In other words, Dallas said, if you want to know why you're so busy, it's actually not the pressure around you. It's not all the other stuff, that we tend to say, well, I just got to. No. He says there is a deeper root issue in your heart. It's one of three things. You're either choosing to be so busy because you feel inadequate. You don't feel like you measure up. And so since I don't feel like I measure up, I feel like I've got to do more and more and achieve more and more and accomplish more and more to prove to other people that I am more than I actually think I am. So I'm going to be busier than I should be. Or, Dallas says, you're doing all that you're doing and you're running so ragged out of fear. The fear of missing out. The idea that, oh my gosh, but what if? What if I say no to that? And that's the thing that would have been the big opportunity. What if I say no to that and it turns out that I should have said yes and I regret it? What if, and this is just for those of you who are parents of kids that are school age, but you feel this all the time with your kids, right? It's like, oh my gosh, what if I say no, kids, you can't do that, and that ends up being the thing they should have done? What if that, what if you're afraid you're not going to be a good parent if you say, so you got all that going on. Or Dallas says it could be driven by guilt, which is just the idea of, I have messed up so much, I got to figure out a way to make up for it. And the only way to make up for it is to do more and to work more and to try to prove that I've made up and I've changed and I'm different. Or when it comes to us parents, it's the guilt of, I do not want to be a bad parent. Oh my gosh, if I say no and all their friends are doing it and I'm not, I just feel so guilty. And then they look at you and kids give you that look, and they're like, they know how to do all that and make you feel even worse. So you're like, oh, I've got to. This may be what you're here for today. It might be worth it for you just to spend a little bit of time this week trying to be really honest with yourself about, why am I actually going at the pace, living at the pace I'm living at? Is it actually driven by a sense of inadequacy, fear, or guilt? Now, if you are not a follower of Jesus, This is the point in the message where I tell you, I don't know what to do to help you. I wish I did. But if you're going to figure out how to deal with these things rattling around inside of you on your own, you just have to solve that one, because I don't know how to guide you through removing that. But I do know, for those of us who follow Jesus, for those of us who are interested in following Jesus, the way of life that Jesus invites us into has no inadequacy, fear, or guilt. There's none. The way of life he invites us into is a life where we're totally secure in who we are and in whose we are. And we're not worried about messing up in the past because we know they've been forgiven. We're not worried about missing out because we know we can just trust God and he'll guide us in the best direction. We don't have to worry about measuring up because we know if we're good enough for our Heavenly Father, then we're good enough. As a matter of fact, Paul, who wrote a large portion of the New Testament, Paul was trying to explain this as he came to understand this, because Paul was just like us. He, if you read the story of his life, I mean, he was living life at a fast pace. And over time, he began to understand what it looked like to sync the rhythm of his life up with Jesus' way of life. And he began to understand how his pace had to change. And he's trying to explain this to a group of Jesus followers in the region of Galatia. And he actually described it to them this way. He said, "You, my brothers and sisters, you were called to be free. Free from the inadequacy, from the guilt, from the fear, from the worry, from the stress, from the anxiety that's driving you to, do whatever you're doing. You're called to be free," which just means, by the way, if the way you are currently following Jesus, for those of us who do, if the way you're currently following Jesus doesn't lead to freedom, it doesn't feel like freedom, you're probably doing it wrong. And it's not your fault you're doing it wrong, but you're probably not following Jesus the way you should be following Jesus, because Paul's going, no. You're called to be free from all that. And for those of you who aren't Jesus followers, but you're trying to figure this out, if the way that following Jesus has been explained to you or described to you or taught to you, if it sounds like it's not a way that leads to freedom, you probably have had it explained to you wrong. Again, it's not your fault. Paul says, no, when you start following Jesus, it should always lead you to freedom. Now, not freedom without any boundaries. No, he says there are some boundaries. He goes on and says, don't use your freedom to indulge the flesh. In other words, this is not a freedom where I get to do whatever I want, whenever I want, with whoever I want, as long as it doesn't hurt anybody. He says, no, it's not that kind of freedom. This is a freedom with some really healthy boundaries. He says, matter of fact, there's a purpose to your freedom. It's rather serve one another humbly in love. We talked about this last week. He's going, all right, the whole point of following Jesus and experiencing this freedom is so you're so secure in your identity and who you are that you can pull the attention off yourself and put it on someone else. And you can serve others. You can live for a purpose bigger than and beyond yourself. And then he adds this. He says the entire law, and he's talking about the law of Moses, all the commands. We talked about this a couple weeks ago. The entire law is fulfilled in keeping this one command. Love your neighbor as yourself. Paul says, all right, so this freedom ought to lead you to be more loving to all the people around you. The kind of, not the selfish kind of love, but the kind of love that's sacrificial, the kind of love that's you before me. I'll always do what's in your best interest before my own. Which should be the distinguishing mark or characteristic of all of us who claim to be Jesus followers. In other words, whenever people think about Jesus followers, they ought to automatically think those are the most loving, accepting people. I mean, it doesn't matter if folks agree with them or not, get along with them or not. They're just so loving and accepting of everybody. But the irony is, while we should be known for our love, we can't love when we're in a hurry. Hurry and love are incompatible, aren't they? They are. You know why? Because love is time-consuming. You can't love somebody fast. It's always time-consuming. So the pace at which those of us who follow Jesus are living our lives may actually be undermining our ability to do and to be exactly who Jesus called us to be, doing what he called us to do. Which is why Paul says to these Christians in the region of Galatia, he goes, so I say, in light of that, in light of love should be what we're known for, you need to walk by the Spirit, and you will not gratify the desires of the flesh. Now, when I read that, my first thought was, isn't that interesting? If you didn't grow up in church, this won't apply to you. But growing up in church, I always heard people use this phrase. What I never heard anybody say, you know what, I'm just running with God today. Nobody ever says that. Now, old school Christians will be like, I'm just trying to walk with God today, but nobody's running with God. You know why? Because God does not run. He doesn't. Which means if I'm going to sync the rhythm of my life with Jesus' way of life, then I have to pay attention to the pace at which I am living my life. Because love and hurry, love and busyness, they are incompatible. You can't do both at the same time. Now, for those of you who are wired like me, you are thinking, that's nice, but I have way too much to do. I don't get to slow down. Are you kidding me? And I'm with you on that 100%, but I will tell you what I always think about and makes me go, maybe I'm not as smart as I think I am. I think about the fact that in spite of the pace at which I'm living and all the things I feel like are important for me to do, Jesus, when you read the accounts of his life, he was never in a hurry. He was never rushed. He never acted urgently. He never ran anywhere. As a matter of fact, he was so unhurried that there are moments and times where when you're reading it, you're like, you better hurry up, Jesus, you know. Lady comes, my daughter's about to die. He's like, all right, I'll be there when I'm there. That's pretty much his attitude. He kind of saunters along, you know. Some sisters send word, hey, your friend, our brother, he's about to die. 3 days later, Jesus shows up. It's like, why are you taking your time with all this? But he was never in a hurry. Listen, he was never in a hurry, and he changed the world. So maybe the pace at which we're living our lives is not actually as productive as we think it is. Maybe our impact would go up if our pace went down. Maybe it is true that you and I have just enough time every day to do God's will. Now imagine if that's actually true. What if, when we wake up tomorrow, we really do have enough time to do everything God would want us to do tomorrow? If that's true, then when we get to the end of our days and we feel like we've still got more to do and we felt like we didn't have enough time for everything, you know all that means? I'm probably trying to do some stuff that God does not have for me to do. There must be some things in my schedule that maybe I shouldn't be holding on to. And those things may actually be crowding out the things that are most important that God intends for me to do. The truth is, and Paul was talking about this a couple thousand years ago. Research is confirming and collaborating with all of this now, that a change of pace will take you to a better place. This slowing down is actually healthier for you and for your relationships in far more ways than speeding up. Now, Paul explained to the Christians there in Galatia exactly what he meant by this, and exactly if they just slow down and walk in sync or in rhythm with Jesus. He explained to them exactly where Jesus was going to lead them, what the better place looked like. Listen to what he said. He said, but the fruit of the Spirit, which is his way of saying, if you will slow down and just walk at the pace of Jesus, here's what he's going to do. The results or the outcome will be in your life: love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, self-control, which is what we all want to be known for. Those are qualities we all want to have. Those are qualities we want the people around us to have. This is what we say we value and we care about. Problem is, as I said, love and hurry are incompatible. And you know this, hurry steals joy. Have you ever been just running nonstop one day? I mean, just busy, you can't take a breath, and thought to yourself, I'm so full of joy right now. I'm loving this. No, because hurry steals joy. Busyness robs peace, doesn't it? You are never at peace when you're running nonstop at a pace too great for you. You're never at peace. I don't have to explain what it does to patience, because you know as well as I do. I've never been in a hurry and been patient with anybody. Those two don't work together. Kindness, I could go on and on. You're smart people. You get this. You can't do both. You've got to decide. You've got to choose. So Paul's advice to the Galatians and Paul's advice to you and me is simply this. He says, since we live by the Spirit, in other words, since we have Jesus here to guide us on how to live life, how about we keep in step with the Spirit? His way of saying, how about we make sure the rhythm of our lives stays in sync with Jesus' way of life? How about we make sure we move at his speed and his pace? Because we have a choice. We can keep running with all the people around us, and nobody will think anything of it, and nobody is going to stop you because it's just normal today. Or you can try something different to become someone better. And you can walk with Jesus instead of running with the people around you. So I want to give you a question. And this is one of those questions that will be easy to blow off. But I hope you'll spend a little bit of time this week thinking about it. Matter of fact, I hope at some point this week you might slow down enough to pull out your phone and open up the notes app and jot down some specific answers to this, or pull out a notebook and write it down. The question is simply this: how much of what you currently do is leading you to the life Jesus invites you into? So how much of what you currently do is making you more loving, joyful, peaceful, patient, kind, on and on? And how much of what you currently do is not? How much of what you currently do is leading you away from it? The challenge I think that all of us have with this is for us to change the pace of our lives is going to be so countercultural to how everybody else around us works. And it's challenging because the stuff on our schedules, the stuff on our calendars is good stuff. But the good stuff isn't necessarily leading us to be the people that we want to be. Sometimes the good stuff is preventing the best stuff from happening in our lives. We're just running too hard, trying to do too much. And it's leading us away from being all those qualities Paul mentioned just a moment ago. So I want to give you a challenge, and this is an unrealistic challenge. I'm going to admit that up front. And you change the time frame for whatever works for you, okay? But I want to challenge you to try something different. I would say you should try it for 6 months. That probably is going to feel like an eternity. You may need to start with 6 hours and work from there. But what if you took your schedule, your calendar, and you evaluate everything on it and all the opportunities and invitations you get through the simple filter of, will this opportunity lead me to be more loving, joyful, kind, and patient, on and on, to the people around me? Or will it actually make it harder for me to be that kind of person? And if it's going to make it harder for you, no matter how good it is, you say no to it. What if your filter became, okay, I don't want to do anything that might lead me away from peace with God. I don't want to do anything that might lead me away from being at peace with others. I don't want to do anything that might lead me away from being at peace with myself. And I don't want to do anything that's going to lead me away from having the margin to serve other people and put others before myself. I don't want to do anything that's going to lead me away from participating and engaging in a purpose bigger than myself. Imagine if that's how you determine the pace at which you lived your life. I want to encourage you to try it. You pick your time frame. Here's what I know. If you try it for 3 months, 6 months, I think what you're going to discover is your relationships are richer, you're more at peace, your life is better. You're going to discover all the things that you were reminded of that could be possible when the world shut down. And if you don't, if you get to the end and your life is worse because of it, well, go back to cramming your schedule full. More power to you. But you and I both know that's probably not going to be the case. So what if you slowed down? Parents, what if you use that as the filter by which you made decisions about the activities your kids were involved in? Because what happens, and I live in the world with you, like there's so many opportunities and so many activities that unintentionally we basically hand over control of our family time to good intentioned people around us who are telling us where we have to be and what we have to do, and we're running nonstop. But it's not leading us to be more like that. It's not teaching our kids to be more like that. And then you know what happens? My kids aren't here, but I've been in this world long enough. I've had too many of these conversations. Dads, moms, especially you moms, 6 months after your kid, and if you could just fast forward and think about this, 6 months after your kid graduates high school, do you know what you're going to be super worried about? You will not care a flip about all the activities they've been in for the last 12 years. You know what you'll be concerned about all of a sudden? Oh my gosh, are they going to make wise choices now that they're out on their own? And I'm seeing them do things, and I don't like that, and I wish, and I'm afraid they're going to walk away from their faith, and they don't, And then we get the phone calls, and you're going, oh, I'm so scared. Can you do something to help? And we're happy to do what we can to help, but I'll just tell you, there's not much we can do to help. Because they were given one set of skills and tools for 12 years, 18 years, however long. But we didn't think about the bigger picture of what we would actually want them to have the minute they walked away from high school. So imagine, this would be, you'd be like the weird family, but imagine that you made the filter. I'm going to help them learn what it's like to be at peace with God, peace with others, peace with themselves, and be a part of a purpose bigger than themselves. Because 6 months after graduation, I'll care about that way more than all of this. Imagine if I'm not saying don't do anything, but imagine if you said yes to the things that led that direction first, and then you filled in the rest with the other stuff. Here's what I know. Life will never be good again until the rhythm of our lives are in sync with the way of life that Jesus modeled for us. So what if we slow down enough to spend some time to be with him, to understand what that way of life looks like, to read the accounts of his life, and become like him? Grow to where we have love, joy, peace, patience, all of those things. Because if we did that, we would be able more clearly to understand how to do what Jesus would do if he were here, if he were me and he were you in 2023. We'd have peace, we'd have purpose, and we'd do it at a sustainable pace. And life would really be good again if we had those things in place. Let me pray for us. Father, this is so challenging to do. Boy, it's easy to sit here and say to ourselves, yep, that's right. But man, we go out and hit the real world, and it's like hitting a whirlwind. So I think for all of us who want this, would you help us to sync the rhythm of our lives with your way of life, Jesus? Help us to see opportunities through the lens of, is this going to lead me more towards that? Is this going to lead me more towards being at peace? Is this going to lead me more towards heaven and being engaged in a purpose? Help us to make that the filter for ourselves, for our families. Instead of just saying yes to everything because we feel inadequate or there's fear or we feel guilty. Help us to trust you enough that in the end, your way of life will lead us to the life that we most want. It's in your name we pray. Amen.